Todd.
Hi.
Lovely to meet you, and thank you for
Likewise.
talking to us today. When did you first decide to make this documentary, and why did you choose a documentary format and not a biopic?
The whole topic was sort of brought to me as a question from David Blackman, who is at Universal Music Group and Polygram. And he's somebody Christine Vachon has known because he runs the film TV division there. And I think he'd been in conversations with Laurie Anderson, who was moving some of the Lou Reed archives into the public, in the New York City Public Library for access. And I think they started to talk about whether this was a time to do a doc on the band in more depth and by a filmmaker who she would feel comfortable approaching. And so those were sort of that was the question brought to me. And it wasn't something that I'd been developing myself, but I was immediately interested. It was like, yes, absolutely, I would love to do this. And I wanted to do a doc. I felt like it would be a new experience for me. I would want to do something different with the form of a documentary. But I also knew that this band was associated with a really specific culture of filmmaking and moment, time and place in New York City that was like no other band. And that just was a promise of a way of telling the story visually that would be very unique.
So you didn't feel more restricted creatively in any way by the format?
Well, not when, because it was going to be about embracing. Really, this film is about other filmmakers as much as it is about this band. This film is made up of all of these extraordinary filmmakers' images. And, we know Andy Warhol, but a lot of people don't really know so much about his films as they know about those images from his paintings. And I sort of felt like that was becoming more true as time went on, and this unique period in New York culture was drifting away. And this could be a way to kind of summon it back and be able to share it with audiences who were there and audiences who were not there.
Yeah. We tend to say that the work of art, in this sense, in this case the music, it speaks for itself. And yet we love to know about the artist behind the work. We love biographies, and how a musician behaves or even dresses seems to interest us a lot. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is?
Well, because these people behind this music or in front of this music, because a lot of them make their performance and their theatrical presence such an important part of what the music is, like David Bowie. Yeah. And in a way, all great musical artists have a presence that you can't really separate from their music. And that's absolutely true for the Velvet Underground and the way they've been historicized in some of the most classic images from the 1960s. Their whole look and style and their construction of a unique New York notion of cool is so much their own. But, I have to say, I wasn't motivated by that as much as I was by the artistic evolution of the band and the ideas that were behind the music and the world of images that they came out of. Like, what was that cultural moment like to be in? So there's a lot of more stories to tell about the band in terms of their personalities, their affairs, their fights, their tastes that aren't in this film, and they're there for people to explore in other ways. But it's not meant to sort of be a compilation of all the things written about the band in a comparable to reading a biography.
It seems that Lou Reed was sometimes deliberately chasing life experiences that would inspire his writing. He almost actively fed his muse, we could say. Do you think that was a pretext to live his life more fully and explore, test the limits, test the boundaries?
It's funny. I think I would say yes, but then there's this other side of him that I didn't really know existed as it was described. And this is the process of the documentary where you learn more about your subject through the interviews that you make. So Alan Hyman, who was a friend who knew Lou from high school and college and played in early bands with him, is the one who says, we went to talk to a music producer, we're still in college, and Lou says to him, well, I want to be a rock star, and I'm going to be a rock star, and I don't care what you do for me, I'm going to be a big rock star, And I was like, wow, that's so interesting. He's so full of interesting contradictions. Mm. And because that's different from, I would think, that's different from the guy going to gay bars and reading William Burroughs and, Rimbaud and, Ginsberg. The one who's really interested in underground gay culture and exploring that whole world. Yeah. He's full of these contradictory instincts. And I think that insecurity that is described by Shelley Allman, who was his girlfriend in college, is a way of understanding all of the contradictions and different layers of defense that he had to erect to protect something inside that was creative and vulnerable and taking risks.
Yeah. There was this restless energy about him. And we sort of see where it originated. What do you think he and the band wanted to achieve? It seems like they were searching for something. He said he wanted to be rich and to be a rock star, but maybe he was searching for something a bit more elusive, perhaps?
Well, I do. I think that and I think it had to do with the combination of personalities and the creative kind of fusion that happens with all great bands. And it began with Lou and John. And because Lou's original songs were lyrically unconventional and challenging, but musically he was performing them like Bob Dylan folk songs with a harmonica. Mm-hmm. And so they didn't quite have a sound that distinguished them from other things that were out there and didn't really go to the core of what the lyrics were about in that sound until John came along. Mm. And so they brought these antisocial ideas or unorthodox ideas to the style and the subject of the music.
And why did it take so long for them to be fully appreciated? Why did that only happen retrospectively?
I think because of the risks that they took musically, because they were venturing into areas that were not being explored by what was already a very broad and diverse counterculture and music culture in the 60s. Still, they were marginal and dangerous. You know what? They were talking about things that were non-affirmative. And most of the statements coming out of 60s music, whether it was in R&B or jazz or rock and roll, was affirmative. And you sort of had to be affirmative in a way. And there was hope in it. The Velvet Underground wasn't really interested in that. And so it opened up the possibility to talk about whole other avenues of experience that weren't always hopeful and weren't always optimistic or positive. And that was a radical thing to do. Mm. And it meant that it took some time to catch up to that.